Jim Cardell, the Executive Director of EDIC, is here also today. I'm expecting also, hopefully Charlie Gator will come in at some point during the meeting. So I would like to, first of all, let's go around the room and make some introductions. We have Mike Diamond, start with you.
Mike Diamond, Director of Inspection Services.
Dave Solomini, Chairman of the Chamber.
Jim Cardell.
Kathy Anderson, North Shore Community College and Chamber Board Member.
Patrick Diegels for U.S.
Councilman Nicolakopoulos, John Roseby.
Chris Bibby, Real Estate.
Ron Thomas with Equitable Bank.
Sandra Lewis, Chamber of Commerce.
Seth Albaum, candidate for Ward 5 at LynnHappens.com.
John Olson, Columbia Insurance.
Paul Gaudette from Lynn Housing Authority.
Thor Jurgensen, The Daily Item.
Jamie Fu, Mayor Diocese.
And Leslie Gould.
Hi, sorry.
Well, welcome. In the past 3 years, the LACC and many of us around this table today have worked diligently to identify economic barriers that have plagued the city for decades. In our search for answers, the LACC has co-sponsored two self-assessment studies, both the Northeastern study spearheaded by Dr. Barry Bluestone and the Salem State study directed by Laurie Krebs. Both studies identified that our zoning laws and permitting process are the two major barriers and real deal breakers, therefore placing the city in a real disadvantage when competing with neighboring municipalities. Let it be noted that the city has amended the zoning ordinance in the downtown district and the waterfront areas to pave way for economic growth, but the same needs to be done for the entire zoning ordinance to have any real chance at any sustainable growth. We all share a common goal, and that is to remove all obstacles and economic barriers so our city can have a fair and competitive advantage. What's the next step? The next step, the LACC is recommending that the Office of the Mayor approve and create a working rezoning committee, which sole purpose is to write a request for proposal, hire a consultant, and rewrite the city's ordinance, including the zoning map that was established and approved in 1925 by then Mayor Ralph Baer. What is this? LACC recommends that this committee consist representatives from the Mayor's Office, Community Development, EDIC, the Lynn Housing Authority, Inspectional Services, a member of the City Council, and from the business community, a representation from the LACC, the Lynn Business Partnership, and the Latino Business Association. We also recommend that this committee be chaired by the Executive Director of Economic Development, Jim Cardell, and the meeting, we would like to be the host of these meetings at the LACC office. This, Madam Mayor, will establish a roadmap to a complete rezoning ordinance, and we would hope make a rezoning your top priority in the upcoming year. And we can begin the discussion from here on.
That was a mouthful.
That was excellent.
Obviously, we can see Ralph S. Bauer's name on this, 1925. There are some developments in the modern world that didn't exist in the 1920s, and there are some things that were around in the 1920s that we really don't need to zone for anymore. Clearly, a revamping of this is long overdue. It sounds like a good representative group that you've proposed. Couple immediate reactions to it, and we can discuss those, of course. I think where this is primarily city business working on an ordinance, it would be better to hold the meetings in City Hall rather than at the Chamber of Commerce. Every zoning overlay or rezoning committee I've ever served on has been at City Hall, the meetings. So I think we should continue with that and just keep the business and the government separated to that extent. I welcome the participation, but I think the more proper place to have meetings would be City Hall. And secondly, I'm not quite sure we would need a consultant. I think I'd at least like to take a crack at it with the people that you mentioned. I think they're all highly competent. Of course, I don't know who the representatives are going to be, but knowing that Jim and Mike and Charlie and myself would be sitting on this, I'm confident that we'd be able to make major overhauls to this, and it is long overdue.
with regard to the actual writing of things, I mean, that's where, sort of the camel is the horse that the committee put together. And I've become familiar with Peabody's zoning ordinance that is all over the map. They've got a new zoning ordinance, and it was poorly done, and everybody in city government in Peabody seems to think like everybody got something, and and it's just not real cohesive, and there are a lot of flaws in it. I think, and I basically know everybody that would be involved. My thought would be having somebody focused primarily on the zone ordinance and gathering all the information and doing that, meeting that one person or that firm that specializes in this type of stuff, to do that type of work. I feel strongly that having somebody totally focused on rewriting the zoning, that's their expertise, with the input of everybody, with the input of the community. Having neighborhood meetings so that the general public could weigh in on what works, what doesn't work, and then taking all of that information and filtering it down, without the local agenda of things. Just how do you take the politics will always be in it, but how do you find somebody that is an expert in writing zoning ordinances?
Okay, first of all, I have no idea how much somebody like that would cost, but I'm not about to put out a lot of money before we've had a chance to do it in-house. And secondly, I think if you were to have somebody outside take charge of it, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, because it's not a bad idea. Ultimately, this has to be adopted by the city council.
Absolutely.
And I'm not so sure you'd get as warm a reception if they felt like they were taken out of the process.
I'm not suggesting they be taken out of the process, because absolutely, the city council would have to adopt this. It's having somebody that has the expertise to manage the process, that consultant or engineering firm that specializes in this type of work. My thought would be, and we don't know what it costs. I don't know if we're talking about $50,000 or $500,000. But I think we recognize the fact that doing it well and doing it right will be more expensive than doing it in a casual manner. And I don't know what that number is. So I would think that with a working committee put together, one of the things would be to come up with an outline, some sort of an outline for request for proposals, that then people that are experts in that, we would know what it would cost. So before we start, we'd have an idea of, if we went the route of an outside consultant, we'd have a very good idea of what that process might look like and what it might cost.
And Dave, along that lines, just with the meetings we had downtown with the MPC and their zoning people, just the people up there that see what's happening in other places, and so that as ideas get floated around, they say, well, that's been tried in Sacramento, that's been tried here, and this is what the results are, that a local group may not have privy to that thing, and so can really if not lead the discussion, can at least focus the group to what other communities have tried and what's been successful and what hasn't, and why.
Well, what about that organization? Because I know they've been active, and I haven't attended the meetings, but certainly staff people have with that MAPC.
Mm-hmm.
And what about their expertise? Because I think they've indirectly volunteered it, from what my staff comes back.
I was very impressed with them.
Yeah.
Who was
Yeah.
that group, John?
Metropolitan Area
Planning
Yeah.
council.
What is it? Metropolitan Planning.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
And they bring resources with them
Yeah.
and expertise,
Right.
and it might be not a bad starting point to have them.
And we pay thousands of dollars to be a member of
Right. The
MAPC,
organization,
so we're
exactly.
already paying.
And they're around, and they're active, and I know you've been at those meetings, John, as well as, like I said, staff people, and everyone, very impressed with the professionalism of their staff.
That's right.
And their knowledge.
Right. And he was clear in that, you can write the zones, you can write the ordinances as tight as you want,
Mm-hmm.
but clear.
Right.
So businesses know what they can do and what they can't do. I mean, we're not necessarily saying that you have to throw the gates open and let anybody in. I mean, they just need to be written so that everybody knows what the rules are when they start.
And that was the big thing that came out of all the discussions, was the uncertainty of, if you want to do something, if you're uncertain of the outcome, then chances are you might not even propose it. If you're certain of the outcome that says, if you do these things in this area, you can put that business there, you could build that building, you could do certain things. It's the uncertainty that stymies people spending the money to get permitted. If they're uncertain whether they're going to work for a year and not get permitted, they'll go elsewhere, and that puts Lynn at a competitive disadvantage. Of course, you see that type of stuff all the time.
Well, there's a couple of other pieces to it as well. There's an opportunity, there's a number of things that are in the zoning code right now with very easy fixes. MAPC, chief among a number of them, was to open a restaurant in the city of Lynn, need to get a special permit. And they were like, it's a huge industry in the United States, is food, and it's completely opposite what everybody would want. If you want to open a restaurant, you're in a business district, open a restaurant, good luck to you. Jim and I have had offline conversations in the overlay in the downtown. You're allowed to do renovation work with the residential above with no parking, commercial on the first floor, but you can't do new construction. And it was, I believe, more of an oversight than that was the intention of the ordinance. On page 7, Mike, it says that you have to have 1.5 cars parking in the central business district. And on page 92, it says delete page 7, section 2, paragraph 3. I mean, there's a handful of very simple,
Right.
that,
Certainly the clarification alone is necessary, because I know you can't read up to page 25, think you found your answer,
exactly.
without going to 102 to make sure you haven't
Exactly.
contradicted your answer.
I mean, if I didn't know it, how would you ever get to page 92 to find out that you didn't need it?
Right.
But it is true as well, certainly with the council and the mayor's office, you take a location like Boston Street that's still zone light industrial. So everything that goes on down there, except for light industrial business, has to go through the whole process. And we're all aware of some projects right now that are, gummed up by that. So, I mean, there's some things that probably could be done very simply, as we just discussed, and some others. I don't know how a rezone of Boston Street would play. I really don't know. I think there's a lot of people that would be very happy to see it. And there's a lot of other people that would not be so happy. So, and that's true. That's a long-term process. I know, David, you were talking about Peabody. That was probably a 2-year effort, and it did come out of Camel. I'm aware of it as well. And it's just, I don't think that was the end result that they were looking for, and we certainly don't want to go backwards with what we've got. So I think at some level, there's a lot of very simple fixes, and then, with the folks that you just described, it becomes more detail-oriented, more cumbersome. At the end of the day, by the way, it's only 90-something pages. It's not like, we're rewriting the Bible.
Right.
So there's nobody in this room, probably outside of this room, that doesn't feel that document that the mayor has needs to be upgraded, right? So I would wholeheartedly agree with what Charlie was saying. MAPC, consultants, the more I started thinking about it, are expensive. When we hired Sasaki to do the waterfront, it was over $100,000. MAPC they are there as a tool for cities. It would not be an additional expense, it would be zero. So the cost would be zero. We're already a member of the group. So I think that would be, I agree with Charlie, I think that would be a resource that we have available that could help coordinate this process. One thing that the mayor said earlier though, so you get this consultant, you get a steering committee together, you recommend changes. All of that leads to the Lynn City Council. It's the ordinance committee of the City Council. That's where the mechanism is to change the actual zone, which is what we'll be recommending. I really feel strongly, I think Tasso's recommendation was to have one representative of the City Council, right? The more inclusive we can be in this process, the better it is. The more people that can feed into the recommendations, the better the chance of success is. So I would really reach out to the chairman of the ordinance committee and the City Council to be active participants in this process.
And Manisha has been at Len for the last year. Butra.
Manisha Butra is the director of the Metropolitan Planning Council project in this city.
I'm meeting with them next Thursday. Is it Thursday, Jamie? I have them coming in next Thursday.
What's the project here now?
Downtown.
Downtown. So where does that leave us? Is the working group, is it adequate for you? Is it something that we can begin in the time, we can start a timeline or a process we can begin meeting? I know you have an election year, I know things are not going to get done right away, but we would like to, at this meeting, as a result of this meeting, actually establish a working group and move forward.
I think you should consider what Jim has said, though, because, and I can speak from direct, immediate past experience. We got a working group together to overhaul the trash ordinance and presented it over a year ago. Or is it 2 years ago? It's been a long time, and it's still sitting there. And it's our proposal, and it should be their proposal. So what we did with Ron Mendez leading the way was to try to make the work easier and say, okay, we've done all the consideration. We've met with everybody who has knowledge of the issues surrounding trash. We've put it together in a comprehensive draft, and now it's up to you to do something with it. And we haven't seen anything done with it. And I'm a little, I feel a little trepidation that we may end up with the same result. But at the same time, I don't want to have a committee of 20 because that's when you get camels. I mean, committees of 5 and 6, you get nice streamlined documents with consensus ideas in them. But 20, I think, is probably what they had for the PP zoning ordinance, and what happens. So I guess the question becomes, to what extent do you include the city council, and how many members of that working committee are city council members?
Counselor, why don't you contact the chair of the...
If we need to include all the city councils, we have no problem doing that, to make it as all-inclusive as it can be. But I know we're going to, the chairman of the ordinance committee should be on that committee, and maybe one more city council member.
What does everybody else feel about this? I feel like I've been doing all the...
I doubt that every city council is going to want to be on the committee.
Sure.
Yeah,
We'll open the invitation.
right. I mean, I can see Darren.
They can attend the meetings at any time they want.
When we had Charlie remembers this, when we had Sasaki on the waterfront, we invited the mayor and every city council to every meeting. There's nothing to hide, it's an open process,
Yeah.
right?
That's
So,
what I would-
Ultimately, is there a vote that comes out of it?
no,
Okay.
no. I mean, the ultimate product would be, not a vote, because a vote would be meaningless. It's a recommendations that then get forwarded to the ordinance committee of the city council. And then they either amend it, they accept it.
Yeah, somebody has to physically draft this stuff and put it in an order that people can read and
Right.
say, and comment. I would imagine that document would have several drafts.
Yes.
You know, the first one being just how you structure the document, so that it, you know, sections and so forth. And then what, you know, what we keep from the old and what we want to change to the new. You know, the things that everybody in consensus agrees on, those are the easy things. The things that you have a wide berth of opinions on, those would be more complicated. And probably the more complicated thing is the zoning map, you know, any changes to the zone map.
Dave, I think that there would be more participation than you would think, because we're talking citywide, right? You've got 7 ward councilors in zoning, replace that word with vision, right? You're setting a vision for the entire city. So the 7 ward councilors definitely would be interested in, you know, how are you going to rezone certain parts of their ward. So I think that you would have good feedback and good input from the city council.
I mean, before you can even start revising the zone ordinance, you kind of have to get from the community, not just the political people, but the people that live in communities, what are the desired outcomes here? Where do we think we're going? And you'll need input from just not the councils, but from neighborhood groups, because I sit and I listen and I hear the business or Chamber of Commerce will go in this route, but there's a whole lot of other constituents out there who would not agree with a lot of what's said at this table. And so what are the outcomes? Are you looking to just change the business regulations? Are you looking to change the neighborhoods, you know, rezoning lot sizes and densities, and what is the desired outcome here before you start? MAPC is going to ask you that when you sit down at the table. Okay, what are you trying to do? Where do you want to go from here? And then how do we structure it and get the information from other communities to present to the people that make the decisions in a way that will get us there? Otherwise, you'll have 50 people in the room and you won't go anywhere. So, go look, talk about what Jim says. You have to get people on board, but what are the outcomes? What are we looking to change and what are we not looking to change?
And creating the process is the most important first step. What will the process be? And the process needs to be something that everybody feels included in. I mean, otherwise it just doesn't work.
When Sasaki came on board, in the beginning, they had those citywide meetings.
We had 19 public meetings, because when at the end of that process, we wanted I didn't want to hear from one person to say, we didn't have a chance to speak. So we had 19 public meetings, the entire city was invited. So I think that this process, you know, you have a steering committee, you have a consultant that coordinates the process. But at the end of the day, everybody needs to get a chance to have a voice in it.
And so when you were saying the councilors, there may only be one or two councilors on the steering committee, as long as every councilor feels they have the right to have their voices heard and
Otherwise, it doesn't work,
Right,
Jim, because
right.
at the end of the day, it's coming to the city council.
Right.
You know, and if they haven't had a chance in the process, then it won't work.
And the process is apt to take several months, a couple of years of gathering information, of figuring out what things we agree on. Such things as, do we want to look at setback requirements and things of that nature? If everybody's in agreement that what we have is fine, you know, we check that off the list. If people say, well, geez, we should have different ones for different areas, then it's a different thing. You know, so the process will be, you know, a long process.
I have a couple of points. First of all, the 19 public hearings on the waterfront was great. It enabled anybody who had an opinion to come and share it. But this one will literally get down to the side streets in the neighborhoods, because if we want to change, for example, I'll give you one thing on my wish list. We have a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet for new construction. There are certain streets, and the one that's in my mind right now is in West Lynn, where there are vacant 3,000 square foot lots, which are perfectly in harmony with all the houses that aren't going anywhere, that are on 2,700 square foot lots, 3,100 square foot lots. And yet, those lots get given away as landscaping, and oftentimes the reason why they get given away is because the person who lives next door to it happens to know the route to go to the city council. It's valued as basically useless by the assessor's office because they consider you can't build on it, because it's not even close to 10,000 square feet. I think 10,000 square feet works for Ward 1. It does not work for Ward 4, Ward 6, any of the denser areas. So, and that always ends up going to the planning board.
We go through that process
All
with
the time.
NDA. And it's tough. It holds up our construction.
So how do you take the politics out of it?
And well, like the mayor stated, we go to the local fields. Obviously we begin the process with the neighborhoods, and we have normally 95% of the people are in favor, because we're going usually into a substandard type of situation where you're just upgrading the neighborhood. But the lot issue is, we have 10,000 square foot. It would look so foolish, and there are some of them that were done even by the city years ago on, I think, Summer Street. They were on 10,000 square feet lots, and the lots there, most of the houses are on 3,500 square foot lots, and it's just.
And then the lots become overgrown because
they
people
are.
can't
You
afford to
drive right by it.
maintain
Yeah, it's awesome.
10,000 feet of landscaping.
Exactly. So, that's a major issue.
And
And you're right, it's going to affect every
the
neighborhood.
city's losing revenue on those. You can't even subdivide that lot legally.
But that's where MAPC can help us, because they have the mapping capabilities to identify those areas. And okay, this could be residential district 1, this could be 2, by the lot sizes, lot sizes and other characteristics grouped together. Otherwise, you're back to, well, I'm the one neighbor who doesn't want somebody to build in that lot, and I'm going to complain to my city council, no one's ever going to get there.
Yeah.
Those places tend to go right through zoning meetings, so, you know, every time you come there, I don't think you've been rejected in the 5 years I've been on that.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think-
You bring good projects.
They're good projects, and there's, by the time we get there, we've gone through a process with the neighbors, with the city councilors, with the mayor. I mean, we're very inclusive from the beginning. And normally, you know, people are in favor of the type of development. And now and then you have some that aren't, and the Board of Appeals, quite frankly, have been pretty fair in the sense of looking at the project for its means, and not so much that maybe 2 or 3 of the neighbors are opposed to a particular project. So they've been fairly open-minded.
But Ron, I'm more looking on the other side as well, where you have a house burned down, and the house is on a 3,000 square foot lot, and the 2 neighboring houses are 2,900 square feet, but the only thing we as a city can do, we assess it as a non-buildable lot, and then we give it to one or the other for a sum, usually $500 or $1,000, and somebody's ending up with a 6,000 square foot lot, when somebody like Charlie could have come along and put that lot to use again. And it would have been completely in conformity with the characteristics of the neighborhood. But because of that particular part of the zoning ordinance, that lot becomes useless to the city.
Well, and the other thing, just with the housing authority, the process and knowing the process and what you do is different than if somebody from that neighborhood that, you know, inherited that lot, and you're talking about neighborhoods that are denser, that are less affluent, that person doesn't necessarily know the process that they would have to go to. They don't have the resources to go through that process, you know, and basically they're forced into doing nothing because they just don't have the knowledge. They get off to a misstep with one neighbor and it just never happens. You know, it's just taking that uncertainty out of things for people. You know, and that's where I think we all agree there are situations where 10,000 lots, 7,000 square foot lots don't make sense.
Well, but I was bringing it up more to make the point that I think only focusing on certain neighborhoods is not what I would be looking for, and I don't think it's what the chamber would be looking for. I think what we're looking for is a modernized 21st century zoning map that is in accordance with the way Lynn has developed over the years and where we would like to see Lynn go in the future.
More importantly.
Yes, exactly. But you know, some parts of it were written almost as a one-size-fits-all, and the way Lynn is constituted, one size cannot fit all in Lynn.
If I could add some comments.
Sure.
What we seem to be focusing on is residential classifications. When I think from the chamber's perspective, it's really what permitted uses we can have in certain major corridor areas like Boston Street, as Chris brought up, or even 107, and some of the major access points in the city. What businesses can locate there without having to go through a multi-step permitting process? And you know, I agree with you. In the residential areas, you know, we can argue over, you know, what's the appropriate lot size, but I think that's sort of not the focus. What the chamber would be interested more is, you know, how can we help businesses relocate into the city?
And I know that's not the focus, but if we're going to tackle, we're not going to just take 60 of the 92 pages or however many pages are in there. If we're going to do a comprehensive overhaul of it, of the business, I would think that it would make sense to use our time and our resources to include the residential overview as well. That's all I'm saying, is are we going to do it piecemeal, or are we doing it as a complete review and upgrade? And if we're going to be doing the zoning maps, I would think it makes more sense to do it.
It has to be both, because as an old industrial city, we were established before zoning existed. So you've got this mix of, you know, residential and business in some neighborhoods where you've got these old grandfathered factories that sit amongst a bunch of houses and stuff. You gotta figure out how to address that, how to keep us going in a proper direction, without unfairly restricting those properties so that they don't get used at all.
And that's what Dave's hitting on, is really our zoning. I mean, business is business, but if you want to put residences above your business, which is the multi-use, which everybody's looking for, now you have to go to a special permit. You can't, if you can't build a single-family house in a residential district and you need a variance, right away, everything that they came, Dr. Bluestone came and told us was wrong with our zoning is wrong. And the two have to mesh together. Residential and business have to work together, otherwise there's an antagonism.
Always clashing.
Right.
I mean, that was one of the flaws when it was written in 1925. You know, when you start doing the actual uses, you can make buggy whips in this zone. You cannot have horses in this zone, as opposed to in a business district, you can open a business, and if you want, you can do a mixed use, you can do apartments above, just like you did with the overlay. And it's more specific to that general proposition, as opposed to, I mean, up until 20 years ago, we didn't have any allowed uses in the light industrial district. Zero, which is illegal, and now we have a couple. I think there's 5 or 6, if I remember correctly. But that's it, as opposed to a whole class of uses that would be light industrial, you know, which is very easily, but definable as opposed to, you know, a heavy industrial use or residential use.
Right.
And so if you've got, I mean, we have, wherever the map is, we have 18 zoning districts in the city of Lynn. We have 3 business districts. You know, you should be able to open a business in a business district. Shouldn't have to. I mean, that's what all of these people are saying. And not say, I mean, there are some carve-outs that we've done. We have an ordinance now for the pot dispensaries. There's some for some other nefarious uses as well, but that are legal. So we've carved those out, that they can only go, and that's fine. That's a way to exclude, as opposed to, you know, say that you can only operate these 5 businesses in a business district. And it ends that whole thing. I've been, as everybody has been at some point, to the council meetings, committee meetings before the council meets. I've been there sometimes with 125 people in the room. 125 people. I start counting, just see, it's crazy, out into the hallway. So, I mean, everybody's saying this, and I think it's really a 2-step piece, because I think there's a lot of very easy fixes. And I have talked, and I think everybody here has talked with a lot of counselors offline, and they're not opposed to a number of items. You know, some have a different view of certain pieces to it. But there's a number of these that could get done fairly quickly, and then the comprehensive review continues. And it could be done by amendment, and then later on, when the final is done, that becomes part of the overall zoning rewrite. But, you know, Michael had a minute ago, from my business, I deal with it 6 days a week. It's really the business regulation side that people don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They might buy one property in 25 years. They might open their business in, you know, 2014, and they didn't realize when they got the permit that they couldn't do this. You know, I put a property on the market. I asked to see their permits, and one was, although it fortunately changed to a use different now, but was on Allerton Street. And there was a whole list. It was a light industrial use, but there was a whole list of, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't employ more than 3 people. That was on the permit, you know, on a 5,000 square foot building. It shouldn't be like that. So.
If I'm hearing everybody correctly, everybody knows and believes that there has to be change. So I think what the chamber is most interested in is getting the process started sooner than later. With an election year, it's always an issue with people coming and going. So I think in good faith, you know, the mayor had made a suggestion. She's actually meeting with MAPC next week. Maybe she could have a conversation with them, and I know they have different representatives from the different divisions, but maybe have a conversation with them about how they could look at the process, and also come up with an initial steering committee just to meet, to discuss, I hate to say the process, but to make sure that everybody's included, and we can move forward. But I think that's what the Chamber's more concerned with, is starting the process sooner than later. And we all know it's going to be lengthy. We all know there's a lot of different issues. Yes, there's Chris said, there's some business issues that we think could be settled earlier than later. But I think if we just take step one and start there, then maybe we can all move forward and then be heard in the processes that Charlie and Jim have already experienced. So
I'm happy to do that. I can talk to the MAPC Thursday afternoon, the 22nd meeting with them.
I'd like
And
to-
I will bring it up to them.
And I'd like to amend my initial recommendation is to include the chairman of the ordinance committee, have an open invitation to the city council, and also reach out to the Metropolitan Planning Council to see if they can assist us in the process.
So from a process standpoint, as Jim says, everything focuses back to the city council. And I think the mayor kind of deferred to the city council, asking the city council to take the lead, should the lead come from the city council, rather than the mayor's office? Or how, obviously the current politics is funky, but in terms of, but wherever things land, in November, in January 1st, having some sort of a collaborative thing between the mayor's office and the city council, on this issue to move it forward.
Can I be really blunt? I think that when we tried to help out by revamping the trash ordinance, there was a certain faction that resented that we took over their job and their territory, and I think that's why it's being held up for this length of time. So if you want buy-in from the beginning, I think you need to let them take the lead on it.
So,
Reach out to the council president and the chairman of the ordinance committee.
and,
Approach them. We'll have them here for the next
well,
GAC.
and indicate that the mayor has deferred to them because it's their purview.
Okay. Do that. We'll still make the recommendation that this committee does move forward as for the committee. We'd like it to be chaired by the executive, the EDIC chair.
That's the thing we're all looking for is economic development, which is,
Right.
If you have a meeting with
Leave that
them
to them.
next week, we could probably have the next meeting like the 1st of September, if they're willing to come in and sit down.
I
If you can
would,
get the ball rolling on that end.
I would just ask one thing, if I am going to defer, that I still become a member of this committee. Because ultimately, I have to sign or veto it, so I think
No,
I
absolutely,
would like to be part of the process.
well, is the approach to MAPC better to come from the city council side than the mayor's office?
Well,
But
since
you-
I'm gonna be
Yeah.
meeting with
Yeah.
them, I'll just broach the subject and say, hey, there's a big move here to get our zoning updated, and we're looking for some guidance, and that's what you're here for.
They would love to do this.
I think they would love to. A nice
Absolutely.
meaty project like this.
Absolutely.
Very happy to do it.
So to do it.
Does this project compare at all to when we rewrote the charter in the city?
Different.
So two different
It
things.
really is. This is, if you read this document, very specific. Charter talks about,
Governance.
yeah, really.
Right.
good word.
And a lot of the charter will always remain as is, just based on the way the state of Massachusetts sets up certain laws. We're always going to have the 7 ward councilors and the 4 at large, and we're always going to have,
But just the process of changing the charter.
that's a whole different,
Charter commission gets
Yeah.
elected.
Right.
Elected.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
it's
It's a very
elected.
long process. yeah.
right. This would be less complicated in form, but more complicated with the ideas that we have to deal with.
Good stuff. And this, you're talking about a document from 1925. Tom Costin was supposed to be
72 amendments since then.
Yeah, Tom Costin was on the original zoning.
I wish he was here today.
Who was here when we,
At this time, I'd like to announce our next meeting, GAC meeting, September 25th. And at that meeting, I would like to invite the council president and the chairman of the ordinance committee, I believe, Darren Seer.
all right.
And I hope everyone else on this table can make it also, so we can, push some of those recommendations and ask them what their view is, and have them, the recommendation of the mayor, to have them take the lead. And we can discuss that on
8 or 8:30.
8 o'clock.
That's a
Is that
one.
because you were.
AM or PM?
Yeah. Are you gonna reach out to Tim and Darren?
Yes,
bef-
I'll reach out.
Before, I'm just wondering that.
But the primary is on 17th, correct?
No, but I'm just wondering that if you're meeting with the group on next Thursday, should we let them know before that? So they may want, while they're in town anyway, maybe they want to sit with them.
Is this meeting-
It would have to be a totally separate meeting.
No, that's what I'm saying. So if we let them know, if they want to sit up and sit with those, sit with the people from the MAPC.
Also for the September 25th.
Before they come to a meeting with them,
Council, we
yeah.
should reach out to Manisha and her
I
group.
have her email, yeah.
And it may very well be that, trying to push it too fast will not have a desired result. Let's meet with the city council first, introduce the subject to MAPC, but trying to meet with them before we get a group together. This is a process that's going to take a long time, so that, especially with the fall elections, so trying to meet with them before we get a committee together and a consensus of how that comes together might be premature.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about meeting with them. I was talking
Just-
about letting the councilors meet with them so that they don't think it's all been prearranged on.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, let's meet with the councilors first, and then, invite MAPC to the table after we discuss things with the councilors, would seem to be a logical process.
So are you suggesting I don't bring it up to the
Just,
MAPC
hey,
until
this-
after the September 25th meeting?
No, I think, letting them know that, that the chamber is working on this and gonna be approaching the city council, and we're all in agreement that something needs to happen, giving them a heads up that we're working on this, and getting some information about what they'd like to participate in is a good thing.
If you want to gauge their willingness,
Right.
how much they
Yeah.
participate.
Going into any great detail with them
Right.
needs to happen after,
Oh, I
after we
agree.
set up the
I
process.
agree. I just wasn't sure if I should stay quiet on the subject on the 22nd until you all had time to reach out to the council or what. So I'll bring it up to them on the 22nd.
Yes.
That's a phone call away.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
reaching out at this stage.
Good job.
Thank you for all attending, thank you.
Good.
Charlie, thank
Good
you.
job, no, thank you.
All right, that adjourns our meeting for Government Affairs for the month of August. Next meeting is September 20th.